Hi again. I'm Darlene Duncan, Vice President of Kenosha Women's Network, and I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Barb Bratting. Fell in love with stories and the lyrical nature of language in a first-generation household where books were sacred and Brothers Grimm fairy tales were told by an accomplished storyteller, her mother, in both German and English. So it isn't surprising that one day in the archives of the college library, it dawned on her just what she could do with that history degree and follow up with a master's in library and information science. Barb has never looked back, championing the public library as the palace for the people in 4 states over her 30-year career. Since arriving in Kenosha in 2014, Barb has expanded children's and outreach services to the community through Kenosha Public Library's 4 branches. KPL Kids at Uptown will open on the first floor of a residential building to inspire children birth through 5th grade with new stories and nurture the next generation of librarians and storytellers. Welcome, Barb. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and especially thank you to Ellen, who asked me to be here today. Ellen has been on our library board for years, not anymore because there are term limits, unfortunately, but she's also been selected by the governor to be on a committee that oversees and advises about libraries for the entire state. That's called COLENT. And so we thank her for that because that is a huge amount of her time. She says that she does whatever she wants, but she's got all kinds of committees that demand her time. So yeah, and she's also on our capital campaign to build this new library. So thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So a lot of people ask here and there, why number 5? You only have 100,000 people in this city. Why do you need 5 libraries? So I wanted to tell the story of how this happened. We weren't looking for a 5th location. It didn't occur to us that we needed a 5th location, although some of the alder people who don't like this project are opposing it because they want one on the west side of the city. So it's not that the library is unpopular, it's just that they want, the services on the west side. Well, this kind of fell into our lap because when we had the civil unrest in the summer of 2020, as you know, there were a number of buildings that burned in the Uptown neighborhood, and the city wanted to get some development where that was, and they worked with Gorman to produce this apartment building, right? And the idea was the first floor was going to be retail space. So the mayor knew that we had moved out of the downtown area with our administration and we needed some space. And so he said, hey, you guys want to move in? We can get some of this space with some of the federal relief dollars. Do you want to move in your administration? And I said, heck no. If we're going to be in that neighborhood, we're going to build a children's library. We had talked for a while about building something with the museum, like a children's museum out on the I, because I think that would be very popular and very useful here. But of course, that takes millions and millions and millions of dollars to do something like that. So we saw this as a real opportunity. And I don't know whether you've seen the literacy rates in our county, but they are dismal. And so after the pandemic, it fell as low as 27% of 3rd graders could read at a 3rd grade level. That's how far down it went. We are only back up to 36%. And I've been here for 10 years. We've never been above 42%. Now, and if kids can't read, people are really misled if they think technology is something that you can do without reading. You're reading. It doesn't have to be a book, right? You have to be able to read. And think how vulnerable you are if you can't read. So, I think in terms of that kind of future safety, especially on the internet too, you have to be able to think and really be very clever in this world, right? So in that particular neighborhood, in the Uptown neighborhood, we're heavily black, heavily Hispanic. We're talking about 36% overall for the county. It goes down to 22% for our Hispanic kids in 3rd grade. It goes down to 10% for our black kids. Now, those kids were down at 5% after the pandemic. we got to do something, right? And so, for the people who are saying, well, why would you throw money at that? Know this, no city money is going into that. The only city money that's going into that building is for operating, and that's less than $400,000 a year. So what's going on here is federal dollars and private dollars, and that's going to make that building happen. So we only have 7,632 square feet, which is a little bit bigger than the Southwest Children's area, but you should see what we're doing with it. And what we're doing is we're creating something as hands-on as possible, because kids, they're going to sit down. There's a lot of kids who'll sit down with a book, but you have to sort of lure them into stories, because everything's fast, and their attention span isn't what it was when we were kids. We could sit down for hours with a book, right? Not anymore. They're visually taken here and there, and that's what they're used to. So it has to be interactive. We have the first iteration of Early Head Start coming into the public library. I'm so excited about that. We didn't have to ask anybody. Our partners came to us and said, hey, we want into that neighborhood. We know that there's a lot of kids that are developmentally challenged in that neighborhood, and they need Early Head Start. Now, I don't know if you know everything about Early Head Start, but it also requires the parents to be in the classes, okay? So when they're interacting with the kids, they're not dropping off infants, they're not dropping off 2-year-olds, they're with them. And so they learn some parenting skills, they learn how to interact with your kids so they can be helpful in getting the kids reading and learning their whole lives. So that's really important. For after school, we have the YMCA Achievers Program, and they have incredible results. What they do is they partner with the schools and they figure out which kids need extra help. And then they provide that in some of the schools around the county. Well, we're bringing the first iteration into the public library. And so what they're going to do is they're going to transport kids. So if they only have 5 or 6 kids over in one school, they're not going to put an entire program into that school. But those kids still need help. So what they're going to do is they're going to provide the transportation for the kids to all come into that library after school. So we're going to have that individualized help. Now, we talk a lot about the reading. In math, it's worse. It's 24% of 5th graders can do math at 5th grade level. So we also need that help. So Achievers is going to focus on that as well. So we're basically targeting a neighborhood where kids are really performing at a very low level. And we're trying to inspire them in a different way. You and I probably can say that we had a strong relationship with the public library when we were kids. Not so much with every demographic, right? And there's good reason for that. The library doesn't have a wonderful history of back in the 1950s and 1940s about inviting every demographic into the library. In fact, in the South, there were separate libraries for black people and separate libraries for white people. So we have that tarnished history. And so, that travels with generations of that's not a welcoming place for me. And so, they may not visit as much. We're improving that. We have a lot more diverse staff than we had before. We have a lot of Spanish speakers, so that's great too. So you can hear different languages while you're there. So we also want to support families. So how we designed this building is inclusive with a special room just for social services to come in and visit. The nutrition classes from Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin Extension are also going to be there because, there's family learning, right? So we're going to do nutrition classes for kids and their families. So I told you that there's not any money coming in from the city except for operating. That was the deal. Mayor Antorini was very shrewd. He says, you can have that space, but you're going to have to raise the money yourself. And I said, oh, okay. So we went out and we got ambitious and we said, if we have $3 million, we can not only do the space on the inside, but we'll have money for programs like Achievers. It's not cheap. It costs a lot of money to do that kind of program. And we'll also have an endowment. Something to make sure that when the city cuts their budgets over the years, this 5th location can still continue. Some of you probably wonder what's happening to the old Uptown Library. Don't worry, that space is 1,000 square feet is all we've got in that building. If you don't know, the Literacy Council has more than half of that building for their services. So we don't have a lot of space to begin with, and we're going to refocus that on the adult level, okay? So, because there's actually a lot of seniors in that neighborhood, so we think we can offer a lot of those kinds of programs for seniors. So that's what we're up to. Of course, we're raising money. I know a number of you participated in 100 Extraordinary Women. I want to tell you that we nearly broke the record in Kenosha. That is a program where you solicit 100 women to say, I pledge $1,000 toward this campaign. And that's why it's called 100 Extraordinary Women. Well, Kenosha went up above and beyond. We're at 174 right now. And I think the record was in Sun Prairie where they hit 200. So we're still hoping that a few people will come forward and say, I'll make that pledge. And then we've been around, and there have been a lot of organizations in town that have contributed. We have corporate sponsors, Uline, BMO, I'm not going to remember, We Energies, Foundation. So we have a number of the corporate sponsors. We're at $1.7 million. Excellent, right? What we are asking everyone to participate at the level that they can. Now, one thing that I think all of us can do is buy a book. And Blue House Books has been very helpful in this regard. They have a page set up for us that includes, when you click on it, if you look at the top of their menu, there's a community projects link, and then it'll say, stock the shelves at the new children's library, I think it's called. And then you can choose one of the books that our librarians want to put into. You don't have to come up with I don't know. We did this on purpose because we didn't want 100 copies of Goodnight Moon. Not everybody's favorite, right? Yeah. So you can choose which book you want. You can get, there's a special code called KPL Kids. It's right there. It gives you directions. You get 20% off the price anyway. And all you have to do is do that. Your name will be in the front of the book, and it'll appear in the new library. So easy to do.
That's awesome.
Easy to do. So I hope you all, consider that. We can all afford less than $20, I hope, right? And put your name on a book, and then go and show the young people in your life that book on opening day, which is, drumroll, July 13th. Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, it's coming up. Yay. That's what I have to say. Ellen, do you have anything to add?
Volunteers, Ellen, about the volunteers?
The only thing that I would reiterate is that you still can contribute to the 100 Extraordinary Women campaign. We still are taking donations for that specifically. You can donate over time, I think it's 3 years.
5 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is less than $18 a month.
So you can space out your payments if your budget is somewhat restricted. So we would really like to get over the 200 so we could get a couple more of us. If you work for a business or an organization that has a grants program or a donations program, there are a number of us who will go out and do a presentation and write grants and things to contribute to our goal of $3 million. Part of that also is an endowment fund so that we can continue over time, because we don't know that technology changes over time. We know that there's new books that come out. We also know that local dollars only get stretched so far in a library budget. But we as a community are committed to doing the best by our kids that we can. So an endowment fund will help us do that. So 100 Extraordinary Women, corporate or business donations, whether you're your own small business or whether you work for a larger institution, get a hold of either me or Barb, and we can connect all of the guys.
I'll be making sure Ellen gets me that information, and I'll post it on our Facebook page so you can link right to it.
Thank you. There's flyers on the table, and there's a QR code to make it easy to go straight to that page.
Ellen, they need volunteers to help move books?
We had talked with Barb a while back.
Okay.
And it's still all in flux as we speak.
Okay, okay.
So keep an eye out either on
Next meeting, maybe, yeah.
We're not sure what kind of a role because we don't have control of that. But if there is a way for us to do it, we're going to try and support this with loading books, unboxing up books, doing whatever the library staff
Needs
has.
us to do.
It's a big undertaking, so if we can kind of help staff and take some of the load off, we as an organization would like to do that. That's one of our 2 community outreach activities for the year. Anything else I forgot, Doug?
No, I just was wondering about that. Fran?
I just want everybody to realize what you know already, which is that libraries have a target on their back, as do librarians. And we are extraordinarily blessed with a library director and a library system that is user-friendly, that is courageous, and standing up to the forces that are trying to suppress your child and your friends and yourselves reading choices. So, good job, Bonnie.
Thank